Anyway, back to on the field stuff.
No, you can't do that. You can't just say, but anyway. You already told me that I have to talk on this show, so I'm going to talk. I gave you the chance to have a 60-minute show with me just standing here.
There's no way to resolve disagreement, especially before we go to talk some NFL with Gus Frerotte. So how about we bring former NFL quarterback, Pro Bowler, now host of podcast. Gus, will ask you about the podcast shortly. Gus Frerotte, thank you for giving us the time and joining us.
Oh, hey, I didn't mean to interrupt your argument there. You guys can keep at it if you want.
I just happen to not believe that the Phillies should be in a position where JT Realmuto doesn't have a contract right now. But I know you're a Pittsburgh fan, so you don't mind if he walks on us.
Well, hey, I got to deal with the Pirates, so that's a whole other story. We need about 6 hours to talk about that.
All right. Well, Gus, we do have, as somebody who spent time living in Pittsburgh for a while, the big question I got to ask you before we get to anything serious is, are you a fries and coleslaw guy on your sandwich?
Of course. I mean, if you live in Pittsburgh, you got to go to Permane Brothers and try fries and coleslaw on your sandwich. I mean, that's how they fed the workers forever coming out of the steel mills.
Jeff is a guy who has sort of tried to live your life a little bit. He's a Pittsburgh guy from his law school days, but his undergrad was at Michigan, where apparently you wanted to go for your college career. It's funny. You watch players on the field, and then when we get to prep for interviews, there are so many things. Jeff's holding up his Michigan water bottle right now. He's so proud of it. There are a lot of things that you learn about people that you just had no idea. You're a fascinating person to me. I did not realize your whole life story. It started in 9th grade when you broke your neck. Can you tell me how you have overcome all of this adversity from that time?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Playing in 8th grade, I broke my foot. I wasn't going to play. My dad said, hey, I just bought you those new cleats. Get your butt out there. So just tie your shoe tighter. So I played a whole year with a broken foot. The next year in 9th grade, go back out for football again, tackle somebody with my head down. Didn't have great coaching, didn't really understand what to do. I actually took my helmet off, got up, walked into the stadium where our locker room was, waited an hour for an ambulance. And then the crazy part is my mom was working as the kind of the receptionist in the emergency room at that time. And all she knew was some kid was coming in with an injury, and then it turns out to be her son. And I wasn't going to play again. She really didn't want me to play again, but my dad being who my dad is, and I had a cousin who played in the NFL, my cousin Mitch, and his coach, which became my father-in-law, came to Fort City. And slowly but surely, I started going back over to the football field. I started doing stuff in the locker room. And then, by 11th grade, I was playing again, only playing quarterback. And the crazy thing is we ran the wing tee. It's not like we just dropped back and threw it every play. I think I threw it 45 times my whole career in high school. So went through a lot, and just to get recruited to play college football was amazing to me, and I was awfully lucky. And even then I got to choose where to go. So all those circumstances just lets me know that, you can be broken a little bit, but you can come back and still live your dreams out.
Well, Gus, you said that you didn't throw many passes. I don't think you had that many people on your team back then, did you?
No, I think we had 19 my senior year. And as my old coach who just passed this year, my wife's father, rest his soul, he said, and we didn't have 19 athletes either. So, we were out there playing with
19 bodies.
Yes. So, you did what you had to do. And I had one thing they couldn't teach was that was being tall. And, I went to a camp here in Pittsburgh called Joe Butler Metro Index Football Camp. And back in the day, it's when all the colleges could go to one camp and see all the players. And that's kind of how I got recruited.
As a kid who grew up in Western Pennsylvania, there are lots of quarterbacks that have come out of that part of the state. Who were the guys that you looked up to as a kid growing up?
Well, obviously, growing up in the 70s, the Steelers were huge. I was always a Terry Bradshaw fan. And then as you get going, you realize who else came from your area. The Joe Montanas and Jim Kellys and Joe Namath and you didn't know those guys. Our towns back in the day when you were growing up, if you had to drive to the next town that was 20 miles away, you felt like you were taking a day trip. Now travel is pretty easy and different. But, those guys, just looking up all to those Western Pennsylvania quarterbacks, and obviously Dan Marino, is the epitome of Pittsburgh. And so, it's just being in that mold, being lucky enough to say I grew up in Pittsburgh and got to play in the NFL, and be along with some of those other guys is pretty amazing.
You end up looking at many different colleges, go to Tulsa, where you, like you said, you threw 40 to 50 times in a season. There you start throwing 40 to 50 times in a game. You compete with 10 people to try and win the job. You're actually the punter before you're the quarterback your sophomore year. Tell us about that crazy journey.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy journey. You go there from college. I was just happy to be there, right? Hey, I'm from this little school in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, and I get to go to the University of Tulsa. And the reason I went there was because of Coach David Rader, who actually showed a lot of interest in me. I looked at Louisville and Temple and some other schools, and, their interest was very mild. Coach Rader's interest was very high. He recruited a lot of kids from Western Pennsylvania. So when I went there, I mean, I had 12 kids that were from Western PA, so it felt like home. And we had a lot of fun our freshman year when I was redshirted. And then, you move on and say, okay, now next year I might play a little bit. And I had to learn a lot about being a quarterback, a lot of film time, a lot of studying, how to throw, how to drop back. The wing tee is great. It's a great offense for high school. But when you go to straight shotgun and drop back, it doesn't lend itself much to that. So I had to learn a lot. And, my sophomore year, just fighting for, job, any reps I can get. And then, just started punting. I punted in high school and tried to do that there. Was lucky enough to be able to be the punter. The next year, TJ Rubley's a starter. He's a senior. He blows his knee out against Arkansas. I come in and play against Arkansas. The first game I ever played in college against Arkansas. And Arkansas was a pretty big school at that time, and I can remember lots of butterflies, pretty nervous, but had a decent game. The first play, I think they blitzed all three linebackers, and just remember looking straight at the sky through my helmet saying, all right, this is it, I'm here. And then it's kind of how my career went. Like, you get hit a little bit, you say, okay, I'm ready to roll now. And then you just keep firing it.
You end up becoming the second-ranked passer in program history, but your combine story is interesting to me because you weren't invited in a traditional way, but you made sure you were there and made an impression. Can you tell us about that?
Well, that's the same thing as my whole life, where you're an underdog. You're not the guy that's everybody looked at as the gem or the candle on top of the cake or whatever you want to call it. But, I was a guy, they called me up and they said, hey, do you want to come throw every day at the combine? And I said, sure, I'd love to. I never had a problem throwing a football. I never, if you're going to ask me to go do something, I'm going to go work and prove myself that I should be there. And, that helped me get recognized because I was out early. I'm throwing the ball as far as I can, throwing it hard, doing what they're asking me, just to show your arm strength and hopefully show some accuracy. And I think it really helped me to get to where, I was drafted in the 7th round by the Redskins. And if I didn't go to the combine, I probably wouldn't have been drafted at all.
You had a long career in the NFL. You're now watching what the NFL is going through with these unusual circumstances. If you were still playing in the NFL today, what would be your biggest priorities as far as deciding to go back or whether or not to go back like a lot of players are doing? And what would you want to see the league doing that maybe they're not doing yet?
Well, it's funny. My wife and I were talking about that on our hike the other day and saying, what do you think we would do? And, we come to the realization is that if we have little kids and we have grandparents around and all those things like we did when we were playing, it might be a different story. I don't know how it would be, but then also that's your livelihood. If you opt out, are you gonna make any money? And if I was a young kid, I would basically say, hey, look, I got to go do this. I might be separated from you for a while and go stay in my own apartment, but I got to go prove myself and I got to go earn a living for a family. Thank God I didn't have to make those types of decisions, where I had a great support of my wife my whole life and as a NFL player and through the end of college. And we've been together almost 26 years now. And she's just been there for me through thick and thin, and to go through this now, I can see how guys who, if with little ones at home and family members and sick parents or older parents, what do you do? It's a tough decision because this virus isn't going away.
Separate from the the health considerations, can you talk a little bit about? I mean, you were a guy who had to prepare to get yourself to where you were. Can you talk about how challenging it's going to be for teams, particularly with free agents who've moved to a new team, draft picks who haven't been on the team, those new coaches, to prepare under these circumstances where you don't have all those traditional team activities and opportunities? I know people are, the preseason, they have their opinions, but you don't have those games. Just going to have a different look this year for guys that are new faces in new places.
Well, yeah, I think that the veterans that have been in those kind of meetings in those organizations for a while are going to be just fine. It's all the other guys. When you can go and do the playbook and understand it, and then you go out to practice, and it gets a little better 7-on-7. You get to compete a little bit. Then you get some team drills, but it's nothing like a game. Until you get to a game, you don't really understand, and the pressure's on you, and somebody's going to hit you, under the chin. Can you stand back up, and can you go back up and remember the playbook and get to the next play? I think that today the circumstances are going to be two things where you're going to see some sloppy football early, and I think we're going to see a lot of injuries early because guys haven't been able to train like they normally would with all the other teams. And by injuries, they may happen in these training camps. And, players, you're going to go against the same guys for 3 or 4 weeks, and it's different than when you go against other people because you get to know their tendencies, you get to know everything about them. And then, training camp and all those things that we used to do, you kind of have some fun when you're doing that. And then the games are a lot different. So it's got to be very interesting to see the first game. And I think it's a model that everybody always wanted to see, but now they're really going to get to see it and how guys have prepared to go through this, and what kind of resilience do they have to say, yeah, we're not going to have some good moments. Are we going to be okay? And are the coaches going to be okay getting through this? Because sometimes the coaches take it harder than the players.
So am I reading this right? Are you a proponent of having preseason games, or do you believe, like a lot of the players, that they really don't serve a purpose?
No, I think I don't know if you need 4, but you definitely need some preseason games because, if you're going to take 90 guys and try to figure out who the heck's going to be on your team, you need to see them in live situations. You need to go out and prepare as a starter because in the NFL, there's only 16 games. Every game matters. There's not 100 or so games. There's not over 80 games, like the other professional sports. So every moment, every game matters. And as well as you can prepare for that first game, and to start off strong and to start off with really good production early, that's invaluable. And the only way you can do that is to really do that through a few preseason games. And I don't like preseason where, a lot of the guys don't play and they're sitting around and, preseason is about everybody playing, everybody getting work, and let's go out and let's get better every day. I don't think that guys get better when they just don't wear their shoulder pads and put a hat on backwards.
In life after football, you've done some different things. You're a coach for a couple of years. You've been involved in studies dealing with brain health. Now you're co-hosting a podcast, Huddle Up with Gus. Where did that idea come from? Tell us about it a little bit.
Yeah, like you said, I was diving into different things when I retired. Trying to figure out your transition in life is difficult. I put all my time and effort into football, and I didn't continue my education like I should have into different things, whether it was business or whatever. But get out, coaching seems like a very natural and easy progression. I coached at John Burroughs High School for a while when my kids went there. My daughter then graduated, went to Haverford in Philly. Now she's at Penn in vet school. And so, we made a decision to leave that high school and come back to Pittsburgh. And so I was coaching. I coached some incredible players at John Burroughs, Ezekiel Elliott, Foye Oluokun for the Falcons. And so when we moved back to Pittsburgh, I started coaching high school again with my sons. And I said, I don't know if I want to do this. I want to figure out how I can reach more people, how I can, maybe do something different in my life. And So I started looking around, went into brain health, did an entrepreneurial, but that became a hobby and not a paying job. But the people I met were wonderful. And then, just trying to find other things. And I said, let me try my hat. People always told me I should go and do this and do that. And I said, well, let me go and try to interview people and do this podcast thing, because I really got kind of fed up with some of the sports radio around and a lot of hypotheticals and all those types of things. And I wanted to hear more stories. And I know podcasting was getting bigger and bigger. And so we just started it. My good friend Dave Hager and I, we just started it, and we called it Huddle Up with Gus. And our first person we ever interviewed was Roberto Clemente Jr., and our second was Rocky Bleier. So those were two things for me that were huge and a lot of fun. And we've been doing it over a year now, and we've been really successful. We're on Entercom and radio.com. We are now just going on to 1631 Digital News down in D.C., and then we'll also be on a sports circus, which is presented by AMP TV out in Las Vegas. So I'm really excited for all that, and we've just been pushing forward and have had some great guests like Herschel Walker. I just interviewed Tom Arnold and Kurt Warner both. So the guests are coming, the stories are great, and it's about what you guys said. I go back to when you're a kid. We all have a story to tell, and I'm sure you two went out in your neighborhood, played sports, played around with all your friends, and learned a lot about athletics without any coach or any, really stuff that somebody's going to sit there and tell you what to do. You just learned it, and that's how we grew up.
Well, we learned it. We just didn't do it well, which is why we talk instead of play. So as a guy who has played the game at the highest level and then coached the game, is it hard to go that route to coach afterwards? And do you become more demanding, especially when you're coaching your own kids, because you've achieved such a level of success?
Well, it's funny you say that. My son wanted to play quarterback. He was in 10th grade at Central Catholic in Pittsburgh. And, and I was coaching the quarterbacks there. And a lot of what my dad used to do to me was coming out of me, and I did not like it. I was very hard on him, and I saw him breaking down a few times, and I said, this is not the relationship I want. And coaching other kids is different. Like, you can get a little bit on them, and parents want you to help them grow up and, get through tough situations and learn how to be those things. But with my son, I said, it's hard for me to go and coach him the way I coach other kids, because, it's a dad-son relationship, and all the dads and sons out there probably understand what I'm talking about. But I just basically, after a few games, I said, buddy, I don't want to do this with you. You got to be happy with what you're doing, and I'll support you whatever you do. And so he switched to receiver. He was a lot happier, ended up going to William & Mary and playing football. And we're still, my goal was to be friends and to be in the same room with each other without wanting to rip each other's heads off the rest of our lives. So that's what we did. And it was great. But coaching from the NFL going to a younger level, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of ability to switch your mentality to talk to these kids, because you might think they know football, but they really don't. And you got to start at the basics.
Is there a chance that we could see you maybe coaching Pitt someday?
I wish. I think that ship has sailed. I'm going to be trying to look forward to in the future of working with the NFL alumni and the Hall of Fame Village in Canton to run their youth camps across the country, which will keep me busy for a long time and keep me in the game. And my goal is to really get the kids to love the game of football, to not walk away from it when they're 10. We know there's a lot of competition with video games and all that stuff. The actions per minute in the video game keeps kids involved, and my sons went through that too. But parents have to understand, you got to push them outside. Sports can do so much good for them, and football is the ultimate team sport. They talk about a GOAT. Yeah, there's really good players out there, but without the players around them, nobody can be successful. This is not a one-man sport. So I think just getting everybody involved in football and keeping the legacy going of what is great about the game. And you got to start young, and so hopefully we can bring a lot of kids back into the game and really enjoy it as well.
Well, we hope you can tell from the interview, we also enjoy the story and the journey and the way that athletes are able to use their platform to help others. We really thank you for the time. Wish you the best of luck with Huddle Up with Gus. Encourage people to subscribe. And I'll welcome you back anytime you'd like to come and chat. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. Like I said, people can go to huddleupwithgus.com and see our website and subscribe. And I really appreciate it. I'll let you guys get back to arguing now. You can go back and talk about the Phillies. And I'm going to go and call my buddy, and we're going to argue about the Pirates. So I'm in the same boat.
Thanks
Go
so much for
Buccos.
the time, Gus. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too.